Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the first lab video of the semester. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch Pat Fader's videos on getting VMware Workstation downloaded and installed and getting the Windows 10 image downloaded from Microsoft's Imagine site. For the Windows 10 image, he has a very long video about getting it and then installing it. I just wanted you to see how to get to Imagine and get it downloaded. I'm going to talk about installing for our class here in this video. Okay, so this is assuming that this video is assuming that you already have VMware Workstation or VMware Fusion, like I do if you're running a Mac, downloaded and installed on your computer, and you have the image, the ISO file from Microsoft for Windows 10. Assuming you have those two things, we are now I'm going to walk you through getting the virtual machine set up to work in our classroom the way we need it. And then I'll also get the beginnings of Windows 10 being installed. That is exercise 1.1 in the book, is installing Windows. So I will get you started with the virtual machine and then let you finish off the rest on your own. Okay? So when I open up VMware, either Workstation or Fusion, the library shows up. If this is your first time, this is going to be blank. In my case, I have last year's IT Sport 108 course. This is Windows 7. It's not good. We want Windows 10. So I'm going to create a new virtual machine. So I go up to File and select New, and this will bring up the installation method window. Now, we want to install from a disk image. So this is going to look a little different. If you're using VMware Workstation, all the options will be the same. They just might look a little bit different or be in a different place. Okay, so click Install from Image, Continue. It's going to ask for the image. In my case, the English Windows 10 Education version. That's what I've got on my desktop. That's what I've set here. Yours may or may not automatically find it. If it doesn't, use another disk or disk image. Click on that and locate it on your computer. Once you have it selected, click Continue, and it's going to ask about Easy Install. Now we have some customization we need to do for the virtual machine. So uncheck Use Easy Install so it doesn't try and do stuff for you, and click Continue again. And then it's going to ask you to finish. Now it's going to give you a summary here. This is not everything we want. This is some of what we want, but things like the hard disk, we want a little more space on here, and there's a couple of specifics that we want to add. So we're going to be customizing our virtual machine before we start installing Windows 10. So we're going to click on Customize Settings. When we do this, it's going to ask us to save our virtual machine. So give your virtual machine a name. My name is going to be 7297. That's the exam that this machine is going to be helping us learn all the skills to take the exam. That exam, 7297. You can call it whatever you want. Just remember, this is the name of the virtual machine that you will be using for this class for the semester. Okay? And very quickly, virtual machine names and computer names, once you have installed Windows, are not at all the same thing. This is only what is on your computer and how you access your virtual machine. Okay? So I'm going to save it, and what it's going to do, it's going to bring up an empty window here. This is our virtual machine. There's nothing on it. It's blank. It'll need to get started. And it'll also bring in a settings page. Again, this is going to look a little different on VMware Workstation, but again, all of these settings will be the same. So there's a couple of things we need to change. So one thing we need to change is in the processors and memory. We click on the processors and memory setting, and we need to set this up. If you have the ability, if you're doing this at school, you certainly do. If you're doing this at home, you may or may not have the ability to have multiple processors. It will let you know what you can do. As you can see here, I am allowed up to 8 processor cores because my machine has 8 processing cores. So if you do have 2 and you have the ability to select 2, please do so. This will make things much faster for you in the long run. Second, memory. 2 gigabytes is plenty. If you have more and want to add more, you may, but at least 2 gigabytes of memory is what we need. Now, if you go down to Advanced Options and open it up, there are a couple of things that we can add to our processor. I want you to select the Enable Hypervisor Applications in this virtual machine. We will be using Hypervisor in our labs. And so we need to make sure that our virtual machine is able to do this. We do this because most processors, most computer chips themselves have a small piece that allows Windows to do virtualization and use hardware acceleration for it. Windows expects it to be there. So we have a virtual computer chip. By clicking on this, we have a virtual computer chip that has that extra option added. Okay? So that's it for processors and memory. Make sure 2 cores if you can. Make sure you have 2 gig. 2048 is 2 gigabytes. And make sure hypervisor applications are enabled. Okay? One other thing, if I click show all, go back to everything, the hard disk. We need an 80 gigabyte hard disk. So make sure that it starts at 80 and then apply. Okay, good. So now we have an 8 gigabyte disk. We have 2 processors with Hyper-V enabled, hypervisor enabled. We are ready to go. So we can close the settings and we're ready to install. Now, when we install, there are a couple things that we need to do. One, we are going to be booting this machine from a disk, a virtual disk. So we need to tell the machine to boot from a disk. Otherwise, it's going to try booting from a hard drive. There's nothing on the hard drive. It's completely empty right now. So in virtual machine, in the virtual machine menu, there's an option to power on to firmware. This is going to boot up your machine into the firmware settings. Firmware settings are the hardware settings of the computer. This is where we can configure things like what hardware we have on our computer, how much memory we have on our computer, things like that. We save that discussion for the A+ course. So if we use the arrow keys, the left-right arrow keys, to get over to the boot menu, you'll see that the drives are set to boot first by hard drive, looks on the hard drive for an operating system, then looks for a CD-ROM for an operating system, and then looks for a network boot, something hosted on a server. We want to change it so the CD is chosen first. So if we use the down arrows, I'm using the up and down arrows here to highlight CD-ROM drive. And then if I use the plus key will move whatever I've selected up or down, or up. So if I hit plus, it moves the CD-ROM drive above the hard drive. Now, whenever my virtual machine starts, it's going to look into the CD drive or DVD drive first for an operating system. Try booting from there. Then if it doesn't find one, it will then go to the hard drive. We will change this back later, but for right now, this is the setting we need in order to install Windows for the first time. Okay? So once you've selected that, use the right arrow key to go over to exit, and then exit saving changes is highlighted. Hit return. It will verify that. Say yes. It is now going to boot from the disk. So it's going to boot up, and voila, we have the Windows logo. It's booting up from the Windows DVD right now. And, ooh, there we go. Exciting, isn't it? Okay, this is actually the beginning of your lab. What we're looking at here is step 5 of your lab. So I'm going to go through a few of those steps, and then, again, I'll let you finish the rest. So accept all the defaults Windows setup that gives you. Click Next. And then Install Now. Click on Install Now. It will take a second, get some things set up, and then it's going to start asking a couple of questions about where we are going to install Windows, because right now the disk doesn't know what do you have, what's available, where is this going to go. So we get to setup here. It's going to give you a long license that everyone, of course, will read diligently. Once you have read it, you will click I accept license terms and click Next. When we are installing for the first time, we can't do an upgrade. That seems rather obvious, but I got to say it. So we are going to do a custom install, which will allow us to install a clean install for the first time, which takes us here. Now, you have a drive. Remember, we created a drive with 80 gigabytes of space? Well, here it is. I only want you to use 50 gigabytes for now. So select the drive with unallocated space, click New. This is going to create what we call a partition. It's going to basically chop up the drive into certain areas that we can use. So here we have the total size of the drive. It's an 80 gigabyte drive, and that's the number of megabytes. According to the lab, it wants 50,000 or 50 gigabytes. So that's the size that we want to create, that we're going to for a partition that we are going to put Windows 10 on. So set it to 50,000, hit apply. And yes, this is just saying it's okay. Once we have selected the amount, we now have extra partitions. It's okay. The system reserved and partition is a recovery, basically, partition. Don't worry about that. Do not delete it. We will need it later. Partition 2, this is going to be the actual drive that we are going to be installing the operating system on. The book tells you something about partition 4. There is no partition 4. It's just going to be 0, 1, and 2. 1 being the reserve system, 2 being where we're going to put it. Okay. We also have some unallocated space. This is good. Later on, in about 3 or 4 weeks, we are going to need this unallocated space. Okay. So partition 2, we're going to format to be able to write Windows stuff on it. So yes, it's okay that it's going to delete. Click OK. And it will it'll format. It should be very quick. So now we are formatted. We have a primary partition, means we're ready to go. So once this is selected, hit next. And it's going to start installing Windows. This is going to take, depending on your machine, up to about a half hour, or as little as 10 minutes if it's fast machine. And then once it has done, then you can continue on with the lab. This is the up till about step 16. Once you have finished this, you can start at step 17 and work your way on through the rest of the lab, making sure you take a look at the changes that I have in the lab document. Okay? So that's it. That is that's going to be this video. That's going to be this lecture. Hopefully this gets you up and running. If you have any questions, again, please email me and let me know. Otherwise, I will hopefully hear from you all soon.